All right, let's see what color I should turn the lights to. They're currently pink, blue for the Canucks, or maybe red because they're a dumpster fire, or 911. Maybe one of their fans started the dumpster fire. I don't know. I think we're going to put it to white, though. I think white's the best option. But anyways, we are back. And today, it's going to be a bit of a different style of video than I normally make, because normally my videos are just me rambling about the topic at hand. But today, it's similar to that, but it's got an added element to it in that we are reacting to something. In fact, we're going to be reacting to the Jim Rutherford press conference that happened a couple of days ago. Couldn't get to it a couple of days ago. Getting to it now. And usually around this time of the NHL season, you will see top executives or general managers hold a press conference or hold some kind of questioning just to talk about the team's performance as of the halfway point of the year and what their plans are going forward. But the reason why it's more interesting to hear from Jim Rutherford is because the Canucks are terrible. If we look at the standings right now, just go to the wild card race. They are currently sixth in the wild card race, 18, 22, and 3 with 39 points. They are about, I believe, 12 points back of a playoff spot behind the second wild card spot that Calgary holds. Playoffs seem to be out of the question for the Vancouver Canucks unless they somehow pull a 2019 St. Louis Blues on us and Spencer Martin or Thatcher Demko go on an absolute tear. This team is not making the playoffs, and because of that and because of the expectations that this team was going to compete for a playoff spot at the beginning of the year, where the team's at now, especially with a lot of drama going on around and the pressure that the market is putting on the franchise as a whole. Everyone was looking forward to hearing from Jim Rutherford and what he had to say, and let's just say there are some juicy tidbits here from his press conference. Some good, some bad, and today we're going to react to the press conference and talk about some of the major key points that I noticed came along during the press conference. So we'll talk about that and a little bit more in this video. So without further ado, let's get into the reaction. Before we get started with the rest of the video, however, I'd just like to remind you guys to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you're new around here. Leaving likes on these videos really helps them perform better in the YouTube algorithm, helps this channel grow quite a bit. So if you want to see this channel grow, again, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you do not miss another video. All right, so I will say that I have watched this once beforehand just so that I can get an idea of the certain things that Jim Rutherford ended up talking about in the press conference. This is also on the Sportsnet YouTube channel, so they have chapters lined up in terms of the different things that he's asked throughout the press conference. First, he starts talking about the Vancouver Canucks core.
Are you recalibrating your thoughts on this core, and is it time now to finally change it all up?
I definitely know we have to change it, okay? And you know, I'm disappointed in the job I've done to this point, because when I first came here, I talked about getting control of the cap, you know, getting the cap back to where it is, getting rid of some contracts, and we haven't been able to do that. Now, the opportunity hasn't been there, but it's still my job to get it done. Until we do that, we're not going to be able to make the kind of changes that we need to make. There's certainly the changes we need to make to put ourselves in a better position. When there's players out there available, we can go and get them.
So that's pretty interesting. Him talking about the fact that the salary cap is constraining what they're able to do, and that throughout his tenure as, I believe it's president of hockey operations, if I'm not wrong about his position, they haven't been able to control the cap the way that he wanted to, and whether or not that's self-inflicted or not remains to be seen. I know he really hasn't signed any necessarily bad deals, because I believe the Ekman-Larsson trade, as well as I know the Tyler Myers contract was signed before Jim Rutherford came on, if I'm not mistaken. And also talking about the fact that until they're able to control the cap, they're not really going to be able to make a lot of changes, which is something that a lot of teams in the NHL are dealing with right now. If you look at Cap Friendly, you'll see that about half the league is using LTIR space, and about half, if not like 2/3 of the league, are right at the cap max. So it's tough for teams to make moves right now unless it's money in, money out. And not a lot of teams are willing to make that kind of deal where they're moving money in and moving money out, which makes for this trade deadline coming up to be really interesting. But I'll talk about that in another video later down the line.
The changes we need to make are not with the core players. Changes we need to make are other players on the team. Okay? And it could end up being core players. You know, when I came here.
Okay, that's confusing. So he says that changes are not coming with the core, but then it could be the core players that change. He'll bring that up and he'll talk about the core quite a bit throughout this press conference, and it'll come up multiple times. So I'm not going to fully address it now, but just something to keep in mind about throughout this press conference.
I knew it was going to be a big challenge, and I thought, you know, we're going to have to do minor surgery. Well, to answer your question, have I changed my position? Yeah, we have to do major surgery.
That's the quote that they're running with, is that the team doesn't need minor surgery, it now needs major surgery. So whatever you want to call that, I'll leave it up to you. But it's clear that, again, like he said in the press conference, that his mind has changed. It's not little things that they need to change regarding this team. This team does need massive change, whether it's behind the bench, whether it's with their core players, whether or not it's just hitting the full-on reset button. This team needs something to change in order for this team to succeed going forward and become a perennial playoff contender and Stanley Cup contender, which is what you want to build towards at the end of the day.
What, in your mind, do they think major surgery looks like? And what do you think major surgery is going to look like? And are they going to be able to taste or have that palatable to them if it means missing the playoffs for years?
So this interviewer is kind of going around the question, and multiple reporters throughout this press conference are going to come back to this idea. And that idea is that the Vancouver Canucks need a rebuild. And it's been something that the fans, as well as the media that covers the Vancouver Canucks, within Vancouver specifically, it's what they've wanted for a while, because they've danced around the use of the rebuild word, and they've said, oh, we're just going to retool, we're just going to fix a few things here and there. It's been 10 years of this, or almost 10 years of this, and the team has made the playoffs a total of 2 times over the last 8, 9, maybe 10 years, which is not good enough. And when your ownership or your general manager are not wanting to commit to a full-on rebuild because the market doesn't want it, the market seems to want it now. It seems to want it now more than ever. And again, they'll ask about this quite a bit in the press conference. But basically, to sum up this interviewer's question, it is, are you going to do a rebuild or not? That's pretty much what it is.
So what it looks like to me is what it's looked like all along. The trades that we make is try to get players 26, 25 years or younger and bring this team together within the next year or two. Okay? This was never going to be a quick fix.
Interesting that he says this was never going to be a quick fix, because his original plan was to just add a couple of pieces here and there and build around the core that he currently has. It seems like his plan still isn't fully a rebuild. It seems to be, as he'll say later on, more of a retool than a rebuild. And you can discuss whether or not that's the right thing to do or not, but it seems like that's what Jim Rutherford is willing to commit to.
I don't want to sit here and say, preach patience, because I know the frustration of the fans and the media, and everybody wants it done sooner than later, just like I do. But in a cap world, it's not that easy to do. It's not like we've had trades on the table that we've walked away from, okay? These are hard to make.
As you heard there, it just seems like Jim Rutherford is feeling the pressure from the market at this point to produce a winning hockey club. He gets it, and listen, he's been around the NHL for a long time. I think he knows how to deal with it. He's dealt with it before. He'll deal with it again. He's used to it. He knows what it takes to win. He's been around the NHL for a long time. He knows how to handle the pressure, but the pressure is definitely there, and he's acknowledging it.
They've seen the same old, year after year, thinking we just need to build around the periphery, but you've got a core here that hasn't delivered for you.
Fair point. Agree with that point. And all the core players aren't going to end up still being here, okay?
There it is again.
But we haven't had the opportunity to take those steps. We're halfway through this season, and we're stuck with contracts that we can't move. Until we move those out, or until they expire, it's going to be hard to make those changes.
He's being realistic here. He's saying, listen, we can't make these moves until the contracts that have been weighing us down for the past 2 seasons, pretty much, basically since they got Oliver Ekman-Larsson. The contracts that they have, the big deals that they have, are weighing this team down, and they don't know how to get rid of them. With a contract like, let's just say, Oliver Ekman-Larsson's contract, you want to try and avoid a buyout at all costs, because then that can be a detriment for your team going forward into a potential cup-winning window if you get to that point. It's harder to convince ownership, let's buy out a guy like Oliver Ekman-Larsson. You can definitely buy out Tyler Myers, I believe. But even then, he's right. They can't really do too much until they get rid of the contracts that are weighing this team down. And some of them are almost impossible to move.
What can you tell us about Bo Horvat? There have been some reports that there's a lot of interest out there, but also that you guys might take one more shot at getting him re-signed.
Here we go. Big news here.
I believe, have taken our best shot. And the contract that we have on the table for Bo right now, I think is a fair contract for what he's done up until this year. But it's certainly under market value for what he's done this year.
So, starts talking about Bo Horvat, and I mean, this question was inevitable. This is just contract negotiation talk from Jim Rutherford, him saying that we put the best offer out. Well, maybe you did. Maybe he's right about it, but I don't know if he is or isn't right about him putting the best offer out on the table or not.
He's had a career run, and he's looking for his money. He deserves it. I don't blame him. But even with what we have on the table for him now, without any changes, which we know whether it's through buyouts or something, there will be changes for next year, we're well over the cap on the projection.
He's being realistic about the chances of signing Bo Horvat, and even if they were to re-sign him somehow, the possibility or the implication that it can have on the team's cap situation going forward, and whether or not it makes sense for the Vancouver Canucks in the future to commit long-term and big money to Bo Horvat based off of a career year. But that's all he's got on Bo Horvat, pretty much. I think they're going to probably continue to try to re-sign Bo Horvat, but I think the writing's on the wall here regarding Bo Horvat's time as a Vancouver Canuck and how much little time it probably is at this point.
Bruce Boudreau, what's his future? There's reports out there that you guys have had conversations with Rick Tocchet already, and that it's just a matter of time in Bruce's case. It feels like he's in a real challenging position.
Yeah, well, we all are. And, there's lots of speculation out there. Bruce is our coach now, okay?
Have you spoken to replacement candidates, potential replacements?
I'll say I have, and I'm not going to get into names, and this is even going back a couple of months ago, that I have called a few people to talk to people, yes.
That's interesting to say as a president of hockey operations, say your coach is safe, he's going to be fine, their coach is Bruce Boudreau right now. But then also to say in a couple of sentences later that you're calling candidates for the job. What has to be going through Bruce's mind right now? I just don't know why you would say that when Bruce is still your coach. Why promise him that he is going to be your coach, but then also say that he's not going to be your coach in the future? Because that's what he's saying, pretty much. He's saying that Bruce is not the long-term head coach of the Vancouver Canucks.
Coming into this season, the expectations were for this team to get into the playoffs, is what we kind of heard up to this point. We heard about building and building and building. Has that plan changed quite a bit? And is this team still building or looking towards a rebuild when you talk about these major surgeries?
We're not looking towards a rebuild. I'd rather call it a retool.
There it is.
My preference is when we make these deals is not necessarily for draft picks that may come in and help the team 4 years from now, 5 years from now. I'd prefer to get younger NHL players that maybe didn't work out in their entry-level contract and, bring them in, give them a second chance. We'll still try to acquire some draft picks.
Can this be turned around quickly? How confident are you that you're able to do that?
What's your definition of quickly?
3 years.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That was more than fair. Yeah, 3 years. You know, I'd like to think it's quicker than that. We got a lot of good players here. I actually had this conversation with the team in our opening dinner. And I talked to the team about, we have really a lot of good players, but do we have a team? And we've never come together as a team. And what a team is to win at all costs.
If I'm a player on the Canucks, I don't know how I feel about him saying that. I mean, it does make sense. Basically, what he's saying is that the players are playing for themselves, not as a team. The only line that has ever stuck and worked for the Vancouver Canucks was the line of Besser, Miller, and Pedersen. That's the only line that in recent memory the Canucks have had that worked and gelled and played like, you know, they were out there to support each other. So it's interesting to hear that. And if this team doesn't play like a team and plays more for themselves, maybe he's right that big changes need to happen.
With that, when I talk about major surgery, you know, there could be core players that have to move out. It may be the way, it may be the only way that we can get significant players back.
He's saying a lot of right things in this press conference. Like, he got apparently like buried alive by certain people, but he's right in a lot of these situations. I think he wants to keep the core, but he also wants to think about the future. And if he has to move out a guy on an expiring deal, Bo Horvat, in order to improve the team's success in the future, he's willing to do that.
What do you say to fans who think that you should tank this season and set yourself up for the best possible pick this year? Do you still believe that maybe a playoff position's a possibility at this stage, given what the standings look like?
I thought we were tanking. We're pretty close to the bottom. But I would never, running a team, go and tell the coach or the players, don't play hard for this game. They have a job to do, to come to work every game and try to win that game.
Every player that plays in the National Hockey League wants to win. Every coach in the National Hockey League wants to win. It would be a dumb thing to go up to your players or your coach and say, try to lose this game for us. It's up to the general manager to put the team on the ice. It's up to the coach and the players to try and win as many games as possible. If the general manager puts together a team that on paper isn't going to win a lot of games, that's the hand that they're dealt. It's healthy for the players. It's unhealthy when they're losing. But the general managers are planning on losing, hence why they put on the ice a product that isn't up to playoff standard.
Why are you confident that you can turn this around quickly?
Good question.
It's the most important thing, is to get control of the cap space. So we're at least in the game that we can talk about bringing new players on. So the reason I'm confident is, if there's no other way of moving players out, in the summer, we will look at buying out some players. And that will start to open up cap space. But a year from now, not next season, you know, the cap's going to go up $4 or $5 million. It's going to start to loosen up, and some players' contracts will expire, or we'll buy them out.
I think I'm going to make a video about this in the future, about general managers and the overall cap situation in the NHL, because I think it's just interesting to look at. But I'm getting a little bit annoyed at how often general managers or anyone like president of hockey operations or whoever are expecting the cap to go up $4 or $5 million over the next like 2 or 3 years. Like, obviously they have more insight than I do, but we thought it was going to go up by like $3 million as of 2023, 2024, and it's only going to go up $1 million yet again. Because of this thinking of, well, the cap's going to go up to like $95 million in 5 years, they decide to spend a ton of money on their players, and because of that, there's a lot of cap problems within the league. So I'm getting a little bit tired of GMs spending money that way. That's why I'm happy that Shovel Day Off for once isn't spending money like that. But the buyout part is interesting. Obviously, I would assume Tyler Myers is going to be bought out. Maybe Oliver Ekman-Larsson gets bought out. We'll have to see. But it's interesting and good to know that he is looking at buyouts to clear some cap space. All right, so overall, was it a disaster? I don't think so. I don't think this press conference was necessarily a disaster for the Vancouver Canucks and Jim Rutherford. I thought he did well with the questions that he was presented. I thought he answered them pretty fairly. There was a point that I didn't actually get to in this video where they were going to wrap it up. And he's like, no. Like, we're not in a rush here. Like, let's get these guys' questions in. So he's willing to talk about the state of the team, which is good to hear. It's good to hear that he's willing to just talk about almost anything regarding the team. He does not want to talk about Brock Besser and whether or not his recent play caused any sort of resistance when it comes to trading him. He did kind of deflect that, but we do get some clarity in terms of what the direction for the Vancouver Canucks is going forward into the trade deadline. It seems like they've pretty much given up on playoffs and they're ready to be fire sellers, or go into a fire sale, I should say, heading into the trade deadline. It seems like Horvat will most likely be out the door. We did get some mixed signaling regarding the core and whether or not it'll change. Odds are it will change. It's just about how many players in that core are going to end up going. They've got about a month and a half left until the deadline, so they've got tons of time to make the moves that they want to make, and it seems like they could be a big player come the trade deadline and which players may be available on the Canucks roster, which I will save for another video. That should be the next video that'll get up in the next couple of days. What does the ideal Vancouver Canucks trade deadline look like? But for now, that is it for, I guess, part 1 of this series of the Vancouver Canucks. That is it for this video. I did hope you enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new around here, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.